Hey guys, this video is going to be about the problem of evil. Now, I recently attended a debate between Alex Rosenberg, who is the atheist in the debate, and William Lane Craig, and I actually got really good seats to that debate, which was really interesting, and also the first time I'd ever seen William Lane Craig in person. But the debate was called, "Is Faith in God Reasonable?" And that was basically the topic of the entire debate. And the problem of evil became sort of a big focus of the debate because Alex Rosenberg had said that, God is responsible for all the evil in the world and all the bad things that humans have done, and having lost much of his family and friends, or not friends, but many of the generations of his family to the Holocaust, he wasn't going to let Craig say that some things that, like the Holocaust or like the bubonic plague, are tools that God uses for good, because that would be morally insulting, degrading to basically the moral fabric of humanity to say that something like that could be used for good. But that's pretty much what Craig did. He said that the reason there's evil, of course, is because we have free will, and so God lets us choose how to run our world, how much evil we spoon out, how much good we spoon out. All this comes together and makes the world. God doesn't change that because He wants us to live with how we are. And so when the actual question of the Holocaust, all the bad things in the Old Testament that happened came up, William Lane Craig basically said, bad things happen. God allows those bad things to happen because of free will, but also He allows there to be evil because in the end, maybe those events like the Holocaust bring more people to Jesus than if it hadn't happened, or maybe if the Holocaust hadn't happened, worse things might have happened, and that was basically his defense. But he implied to Rosenberg that if he could come up with a situation where free will was still a factor, where humans could still choose to be evil or good, and he could reduce the suffering of people, then the problem of evil would be a real problem, because William Lane Craig said that the problem of evil wasn't really a very big problem to philosophers nowadays, which may or may not be true. He didn't really support it. I mean, if it's not that big of a problem, then why not explain why in a convincing manner? But he said that if there was a way that very little of the world could change in terms of free will and allowing us to do all the crappy stuff we do to one another, and then suffering could be somehow removed from that, then it would be a problem. And to this, Rosenberg didn't really address it. He just simply went on to say that this kind of debate wasn't very good for the topics that were being talked about, because it really wasn't. But what I wanted to address is the fact that I think I've come up with a situation like this, and I talked about it in my video, "A God to be Blamed," about 3 minutes in or so. I talk about the quality of God being all good, and I take a look at the world, and there's evil, and there's suffering, and there's needless suffering. And to this, William Lane Craig will probably say, well, suffering isn't all bad. It brings people to Jesus. It builds character. It allows us to use our free will. Maybe if we weren't suffering now, we would have suffered more later. Like all these kind of things that add up together. But what I would like to say is that God knows everything, right? He's omniscient. He knows all past, all history, all present, all things happening at all times. And supposedly He's timeless, so He's outside of time, so He sees all of it at once. Whatever you want to believe. From that perspective, God already knows who's good, who's evil, who's going to eventually come to believe in Him, who's going to deny Him, all the good, bad things you're ever going to do, all the people you're going to try and bring to Christ, or the people you're going to take away. Um, Imagine anything you could ever do in your lifetime, and God knows in advance that it's going to happen. So basically, your entire history and the history of every single person to ever live in the universe is already, in essence, uh, known and has already happened in the mind of God. Um, our futures are set, and I'm not trying to get into like Calvinism and like predestination, but God knows everything. So he knows what the final outcome of every situation is going to be. Okay, so God knows who's going to suffer. He knows who's going to be able to take the suffering and who's not going to be able to, and all these things. Right? He knows everything. So with this in mind, why would God make suffering prolonged? If he's all good and we're addressing the problem of evil in the world, why would God make the suffering so prolonged? Why would he make it needlessly prolonged? Because after all, he is all powerful. He's omnipotent. Therefore, he could make the entire lifespan of the universe 1 second, or a tenth of a second, or infinitely short bits of time. Basically, what I'm asking is, if God's all good and he doesn't really like suffering, he would never wish it upon us if it were needless and if it didn't have to happen in order to save us from other things or deny us our free will, then why doesn't he get rid of all the needless suffering in the world? Why doesn't he make the entire lifespan of the universe the amount of time that it takes for the brain to receive pain from the nerves in your fingers or head or wherever you're suffering from, or your heart? Like all pain goes through the brain. So instead of making people endure these things and go through these agonizing years of whatever, random stuff they have to wade through in their life to get to heaven or get to hell or help other people to heaven or help other people to hell, why not just not even have that? He already knows who's going to heaven and who's going to hell. And I've gotten the response that, I ask that why couldn't God make all the universe just a single second? And I've gotten the response that, well, to God, that's how it is. It probably is like the entirety of time and space is just, this little dot in 1 second of time. Well, it isn't like that for us, the beings who are suffering. It's years of suffering, and it's dying in agonizing ways over and over again, billions of times, hundreds of billions, by the time we go extinct, if we do. And so what we have is a system of needless suffering. And when it comes down to the problem of evil, God can't be good, because like Craig said, if there was a scenario that could be proposed where humans still have free will, we would still have free will if the universe only lasted 1 second. We would still have the choice to make others suffer, and from God's point of view, all those things have already happened. Like he knows, 10 years down the line when I have kids, when one of them is going to do something bad. It's basically already happened in his mindset, because he's seeing all time at once. If God knows all this, then why actually make us go through it? Because to me, that just seems like not only pointless, but also malevolent, and also not anywhere near the hallmark of a loving God. To me, that's needless suffering. And if the purpose of existence is to choose God or not to choose God, or go to hell or heaven, whatever, then that leaves no purpose to actually live, because God knows in advance what you're going to do, and so he can reward you or punish you or justly judge you accordingly. So the actual fact that maybe someone dies of cancer, but then their story inspires other people to go to Jesus, and then they go to heaven, none of that actually has to happen, or has to happen on a timescale that allows humans to suffer. I mean, if God's all powerful, all these things can play out, and free will exists, and everyone who would have gone to heaven goes to heaven. Everyone who would have gone to hell goes to hell. All the good things you've ever done are accounted for, and the bad things as well. Um, these are all things which are already set. So why not uh, just not even exist to begin with, or exist for a second? To me, that seems like needless suffering. Um, so I think that's a fairly good case for sort of adding more steam to the problem of evil, because I personally think that the riddle of Epicurus is pretty sufficient for this. But when someone puts a response like, no, it's free will, God uses suffering to bring people to Jesus, all these things that are the common responses, I think my response to those responses is enough to sort of settle the question until, of course, people respond to this, which I would be delighted to hear, because um, I feel like this is something God could totally do, but he doesn't, and so he's basically evil, or at least not all good, which is kind of already known, but just to sort of hash that out a bit. Thanks for watching.